And thanks everyone, first and foremost, for having me today and allowing me to have this conversation with you. We're at a pretty incredible time as far as AI is concerned. And I'm going to say ChatGPT a few thousand times over the next 30 minutes. But as I do that, I really want you to be thinking, every time I say ChatGPT, I want you to be thinking generative AI, because really the phrasing here is very important around the way that we are looking at information. And of course, ChatGPT being a product that's going to essentially give us a result that we are looking for, any result that we're looking for, we have to make sure we're using the right terminology. So the generative AI discussion is really a level above ChatGPT, and it's one that speaks to the importance of understanding what our needs and risks and opportunities are in Gen AI overall, really as a society. So the interesting thing is when Quorum, for those of you that know Quorum, came out with their top 10 disruptive technologies back at the end of 2022 and into the beginning of 2023, the interesting thing on this slide is that none of them, of course, are focused around generative AI. They are all focused around terms and phrases and technologies that I imagine most of the people in this room are familiar with, but none of them specifically call out the generative AI topic. Now, why do you think that is? Well, my thought on it is that the reason why Gen AI isn't here is, first of all, because it didn't really come onto the scene in the way that we've all watched it transpire over the past, few months, really. But the reason why it isn't here is because generative AI, ChatGPT, DALL-E, all of those good and exciting products are really omnipresent in each of these verticals, each of these other technologies, in the way that they all operate. So our conversation today is really, when you think about things from risk and opportunity perspective, it's trying to understand the role that Gen AI plays within each of these vertical markets, within these technologies, within these partnerships, within these opportunities, and identifying the strengths and weaknesses in order to properly and effectively really decipher what this opportunity really looks like for businesses and figure out where ChatGPT actually plays. So I imagine most of the people in this room, and I believe there are just under 40 of you that are hanging out with me today, thank you for that. When you think about ChatGPT, what do you think? And there is a lot out there today. Imagine in today's day and age of what's going on, we have a war happening. We have all sorts of things happening in politics. We have all sorts of things happening all over the world in all sorts of different ways. And yet almost daily, we see that ChatGPT and generative AI topics are on the front pages of those, what were those things called? Newspapers, right? They're on the front bleeding edge of all of the publications that we all consume on our devices. And when I look at this and I think of all the different ways that ChatGPT has really forced itself on us, there's a strange irony here for me, because the irony of ChatGPT is it's only as good as what you tell it. It's only as good as the information that it contains. So while you look through these three images and you see, well, wow, ChatGPT passed a Google coding interview to be an engineer with a massive salary. That's wonderful. But that test was set up by, presumably, an individual. At some point, an individual had to come up with enough questions, enough content, enough information in order for that test to be written. So when we look at the realities of AI today, and we hear about these things that ChatGPT and generative AI are going to be replacing marketing, physical labor, management, high ticket sales, all sorts of important things that are currently being done at a job level by an individual. Our reality is that all of these technologies are only as smart as we make them. I delivered a similar presentation on generative AI in February, just after the Super Bowl, or the big game as they call it now. And I made a comment to the audience that here we were standing, I believe it was 6 days after the big game, and ChatGPT didn't know the results of that game. Everybody in pretty much the world that had access to that content, that information, would have known who won the big game, who won the Super Bowl, and ChatGPT being the thing that's sort of leading people from a technological level didn't know who won that game. And the biggest anomaly for me here personally is the disclaimer that comes up on the GPT page when you run your queries and do your searches and try to find your content. You see this big disclaimer that says that ChatGPT may not know certain items prior to 2021. Well, it's 2023. That's 2+ years in some cases. That's a really big gap. And yet here we are pushing this technology that is supposed to be changing the world and doing all these amazing things. Not to say that it won't, but I think that we need to really focus on what's important here. And what's important is making sure that ChatGPT is really doing the right things, not the wrong things. I shouldn't have to go too deep on what the wrong things are. I will in a few slides, but I imagine you can all close your eyes and think about what those negative things might be. And we see them all the time. Those are the things that make the news that people are particularly interested in. And that's certainly not where we want the opportunities to be. Now, what this generative AI thing is all about, well, our previous speaker who did a fantastic job spoke about this in great detail. They spoke about how this works on a day-to-day option, what text captions are used, how AI operates. So I won't go too deep here, but when you're looking at the database of neural network or LLM, we understand what the concepts are. You have your network, you input certain content, whatever that content might be. You generate the responses and the content from a trained model perspective, and then ChatGPT simply outputs the information based on the content that we have put in. And this isn't new. I think that's a really important thing to mention here. This is not a new technology. It is newly available to us, but it wasn't grown or born overnight. We all remember years ago when Google, for example, was working on some of their image recognition software. And this is many years ago now, but the software couldn't discern between the difference between a car and a bird. It knew that they were both items, elements, objects, who knows, but it didn't know the difference between the two. So when you look at those, that imagery today, of course, things have come a long way. We know what the differences are between these items, but the reality behind generative AI is that the content that's being put out there is really focused around the information that has been put in there. It's only as smart as what we have been able to make it. So you see the input prompt here, write a limerick about data taking over the world, include the word egg, and you get something. Well, that's great, but what's the application of that information? How is that information now going to be relevant to us as individuals, as real life tax-paying, law-abiding citizens who live in the real world? The content is only as good as the information that we have put into it. Now, the reality, of course, is when you look at some of these opportunities and you look at generative AI and the various products that are available to us, you recognize that, this is really a chatbot. Now, a chatbot is not a new item. It's not something that anybody has never used before. We're very used to it. Excuse me. When you think of a chatbot, most people think of a chatbot the same way that I think of a spam email. It's something that I don't really use. It's something that at the bottom of right-hand corner or whatever corner of your website is available to you. And what's the first thing that comes up? It's a customer service thing, but typically it's used for sales purposes. In this example, that's exactly what it's doing. I'm looking for something. Can you direct me? So on and so forth. We have this engaged at EMAR Consulting on our .com website, and it works very well. But the realities of it is that they've been around for a very long time, and they're generally used to provide information back to individuals. And we're dealing with and working with very specific information at a customer service level, at a one-to-one level, at an individual level. And that's very similar to what ChatGPT and generative AI are truly all about. When you look at the Verified website, reverified.com, this is my business Verified. And when you look at the Verified website, this was a screenshot taken a couple of weeks ago, the various jobs that are available on the site. You look at this list and you say, okay, these are the jobs that are currently available. This is content that is available to me. I'm familiar with this interface. I'm familiar with the content. I click on the link. I send the information. I might apply for the job or not. Cool. I understand that, right? These are very understood processes that go a long way from an individual day in, day out, data in, data out perspective. And that's what we do at Verified. What we do is look at the information, the content that's there, and in the resume and try to verify it. The realities from a learning perspective is that we are now, of course, seeing more and more resumes that are coming in with, we'll call it ChatGPT or generative AI content. And it's obvious to us that that information is not coming in from an individual. It might be on someone's resume, but it's obvious to us that the verbiage that was used, vernacular that was used, is not in the tongue, so to speak, of the individual who's sending in the resume. Now, I could tell you how we would do that, but then I'd have to kill you, and I don't want to do that just yet. But these are some of the negative things that are now impacting the job world. So what we do at Verified and what ChatGPT does and what generative AI does is not new. And I've mentioned that from the top. There's a website out there called Turnitin for those that might be in the educational environment. Turnitin is a system that allows students to upload their papers and college, university level content in order for Turnitin to essentially run a chatbot or run a bot that's going to verify the content and assign a score to a particular paper and say that this paper is X, Y, or Z certified. It might be 4% questionable or 40% questionable. Obviously, there's going to be, in terms of educational papers, there's going to be a certain content limit that's going to be okay, provided there are citations that are made. But a paper that has 40 different errors on it or 40 different questionable items on it is going to really become something that student doesn't want to submit. Why? Because what would happen to them? Well, they might get reprimanded, kicked out of school, what have you. Right now, this is one of the few cases where ChatGPT has a very solid wall, where from a generative AI perspective, people recognize that use Turnitin recognize that there is an action, reaction, and recourse based on using this platform negatively. And you can see that one of the reasons why this slide is here is you can see off the top, it says follow our progress on detection initiatives for AI writing, ChatGPT, and AI paraphrasing. So as ChatGPT and generative AI topics are becoming more commonplace in the educational environment, these companies, much as mine have really had to adapt and say, this is how we're going to handle this. This is the way that we have to tune the algorithms in order to create a better environment for everybody. Because I don't think there's anybody in the world that wants to see the reaction or the economic situation in 10 years' time if we don't hone in on what generative AI really needs to focus on, and more importantly, not focus on. What I'm saying is, if every college student was to spend the next 3 or 4 years writing their papers with ChatGPT and handing in the same work, no one's learning. No one's able to pass and get their grades on their own accord. They're just working at a level that is not up to their standards. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't use ChatGPT and generative AI to empower themselves, as it says, empower students, and to use these products to bolster their papers. I think we recognize the difference between using it to bolster as a fact finder versus using it to sort of game the system. But I think there's a gigantic issue there, and something that needs to be addressed at a very, very fundamental level in order to make sure that we get the right product out of the universities and educational systems that are in front of us. Now, when you look at ChatGPT, and these are some statistics from February, really what's happening out there right now is very much organized chaos. And there's all sorts of questions and all sorts of thoughts around bias and where ChatGPT in particular might be biased. The image behind here, which you can recognize as a ChatGPT screen, talks about the results of somebody who who asked them to, bless you, write an article in about Hunter Biden, rather, in the style of, and you can see what it says for CNN, but it wouldn't do it in and within the context of another news platform. So there are issues with ChatGPT, and there are some question marks around the way that that's going to impact us as we start to move forward. Now, I mentioned off the top that I would love to have ChatGPT and generative AI as synonymous terms, but ChatGPT isn't the first one to come to the dance here. Here are 8 different products who have long been in the AI space and generative AI space that are making great impacts in the products that they have in the market, and they're doing fantastic things, and they're becoming very important players in the modern generative AI workspace. The difference between these 8 and another 8 that I'll show you on the next slide and ChatGPT is that these have specific purposes. So you're essentially, if you go to these websites, you are the consumer, and you are sourcing out these specific websites, these specific products, in order to get you a specific result. So if I want a resume written, I can go to number 6 here, go to Resume AI, they'll write me a resume. Well, we know that ChatGPT will do that as well, but either way, these are specific products that will perform specific tasks for you. But for some reason, and I honestly don't know what this is, for some reason, the ChatGPT world has really focused on, the generative AI world rather, is focused on ChatGPT as that product. And as the product continues to expand and really become its own beast, it'll be interesting to see how some of these products may either embrace ChatGPT as a product, or in some cases, I imagine some of these will go away. If Resume AI doesn't do something that is dramatically different to ChatGPT, ChatGPT already has the marketplace as far as users are concerned, and that might go away. So a sort of side note here would be, for anyone who is using these currently, I would be very careful with the information that you were sharing with them and where that content might be stored. I promised another 8 before I go into the slides on opportunities and threats, and then, believe it or not, that is a very quick half an hour. But here's 8 more that you may want to go out to, from WordTune to Murph AI, which does a great job in a voice context, to Stock AI for free AI generated stock photos, Magic Eraser, so on and so forth. Again, very much focused on product service, and you become the consumer using a specific item to get you a specific result, different to the way ChatGPT will just answer your questions. But net, you've now seen 16 different products that are out there. So go out and learn and understand what it is that the generative AI world has for you. From the perspective of opportunities and threats, I've spoken throughout our conversation today about what those opportunities can look like, what those threats can look like. And I think there's a lot. Now, I typically don't have a ton of information, or sorry, a ton of bullets on my slides. These do. In my professional opinion, I think that the opportunities here really focus around the what I referred to earlier as the bolstering of information. So not taking specific content and simply copying and pasting it into an email or a website or an educational paper or anything else. I want you to think of this as something that's sort of more personal. So if you wanted to write personalized email messaging content, looking to nurture leads, looking at blog posts, anything on or around the thought leadership campaigns, videos, scripting, ebooks, long form content, social media, ChatGPT does a fantastic job, as all generative AI products do, of creating that content at a level where you are engaging with the generative AI product, and you're working back and forth with them in order to bolster that information, to provide additional content, to get stronger, better, faster with the way that you need to, certainly today from an online perspective. That being said, my recommendation on the opportunities side would be, and this is typically not the way people think, but create your content first. Create your, if you're writing a blog post on something, create your page of blog content, and then look for areas or opportunities within that page to add ChatGPT content. So create your page and then ask ChatGPT some questions that might be assistive as far as the information that it provides you, and you being able to go in and adding that content within an existing blog post. If you simply go to ChatGPT and do it in the reverse fashion and say, okay, give me a blog post on the Global Big Data Conference and Eric Riz's speech, you might get 2 paragraphs or who knows of content. The issue there is going to be, well, how do you then become the one who needs to bolster the blog post? That gets difficult. If you already have your concepts together, your thoughts and your ideas, then the opportunity is in front of you to really use ChatGPT as your assistant, your virtual assistant. On the risk side, again, I think that we've had most of these conversations today. I think that the context understanding piece and the personalizing of content pieces are your 2 riskiest issues as far as ChatGPT goes. I spoke a few minutes ago about the fact that chatbots are not new in the workplace or on the web. We're all very used to those, and they work well when you're asking a simple question and getting a simple answer. From a customer service perspective, there are a lot of pains that need to be addressed. I, for one, if I call my bank for something or do something via online banking or even my cell phone provider, all I have to do is hit a few keys, hit a few numbers, and my entire world, my entire profile within that organization shows up for me. Well, if I'm using a generative AI product, it may not have that consistency. It may not have that information on me, which is going to frustrate me. And then I won't be able to really understand, or ChatGPT rather won't be able to really understand what your customer's sentiment is all about. If that person is angry and you're dealing with somebody on a one-to-one, you sense that anger, you sense that disappointment in the experience that they are getting, and you're able to address that, hopefully, and engage with them differently. And these are all items and elements that ChatGPT is not going to be able to really understand from a customer behavior perspective. And the demands of all of us today and our expectations of all of us, certainly coming out of a COVID world, is a better customer experience, not a poor customer experience. People are very quick to criticize online when they don't get the right customer experience, and it's left to the organizations to try to fix that. And that's not something in my perspective in mind that ChatGPT is going to be able to address anytime soon. That being said, that is my time for today. I know I was to leave a few minutes at the end for questions. So if anyone does have some questions, by all means, please come on and share your screen if you'd like to. Sorry, your camera if you'd like to, and unmute. And if you have any questions, by all means.